Hello and welcome to Mortgage Solutions. I'm your host, Mark Rigney. Earlier we did a show on short sales. Now we received so many phone calls and emails with your questions that we've decided to do a follow-up show on short sales. There are many ways to lose a home, but signing away a home through a foreclosure or bankruptcy will destroy your credit and can affect your personal finances in a multitude of ways. For owners who can no longer afford to keep mortgage payments current, there are alternatives to bankruptcy or foreclosure proceedings. One of those options is called a short sale. Now, a short sale is a sale of real estate in which the proceeds fall short on the balance owed on the property's loan. In our studio today, we have Ray Towles, who is a licensed real estate agent. Ray negotiates short sales and acts as a conduit between the lender and the seller. Hi, Ray, and thanks for being on the show today. We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Ray, what are the initial first steps you take when dealing with a short sale?
Well, consumer makes a request that we get involved in it. The first thing we start with is the listing of the property. Do a listing contract, get the lockbox and sign on the house, get the house listed in the MRIS, the Metropolitan Regional Information Systems, and allow the house to be shown and out there for sale.
What is going to be required of the homeowner or seller during this initial process? What are they going to need to worry about and get done?
Good question. Very little, really. Allowing us to get in and show and sell the house essentially for them, and produce any required or requested documentation that the lender may ask for, but not a lot.
So they're going to need to at least make the house presentable.
Not always. The short sales kind of denote the idea that there's an issue there, and a lot of these are all done as is, so there's not a great demand for the house to be staged, as it were, to be sold.
Are you finding a lot of these homes are in a state of disrepair, missing appliances, exposed wiring, missing drywall, things of that nature?
Absolutely. At that point when people have gotten to a point where they're kind of turn their head away from the responsibilities of that property, a lot of times we find that. I mean, it's why we always do as is as part of the addendum to the contract.
Is it a given that most lenders will automatically sign off on a short sale? Will they go ahead and go for it if the loan's in default?
It makes good financial sense for them to do so. So in my experience, I've not seen any rejected from short sale, as long as we can move the process forward. Where sellers are obstinate about letting people in or getting the house sold or getting a contract, then yeah, foreclosure becomes that option. But it makes a much better choice for the lender to allow a short sale. They can, in a real orderly fashion, transfer ownership from that client of theirs or who they're representing as far as the owner of that note onto a new buyer without the cost or process or hassle of a foreclosure and a lot of delay in time.
What's been your experience with the amount of time these lenders are taking to sign off on a short sale? You hear in the news that they're taking forever, that everything's being delayed because you haven't got lender approval. What's your experience with that?
Experience with that is typically you look at 3 to 6 months as a kind of a rule of thumb.
Wow, 3 to 6 months.
It can be time consuming. There are certain institutions that have implemented websites that make it very easy for us to upload the documentation and supply that very quickly, and for negotiators to be assigned and to move more quickly than most.
Do you have any idea why it's taking so long? It's just the bureaucratic red tape that these big banks go through? It's delaying the short sale process?
I think it's the sheer volume of short sale that they're having to deal with, which is really in the note or in the idea of why short sales are also working well. Because if there was only a few to be had, foreclosure might be a better option in the idea that they can kind of pronounce their authority over the clients or the customers. But in the idea there's such a volume of people delinquent and behind on mortgages that it's a better option. It allows them more orderly transfer of ownership without all that cost and without all that headache, and certainly without the possibility of the lender becoming a homeowner, which they don't want to do. They don't want to take on taxes or winterizing houses and paying utility bills. They'd rather transfer from one person to another.
How does one determine, or how do you determine, who is a good candidate for a short sale real estate transaction?
If you are currently in the path of a foreclosure, or you find yourself in the nearest future seemingly unable to make...
How many payments delinquent?
I don't know that it's not a requirement that you be even delinquent on your loan currently
you just
to
see
be
hard
considered.
Times coming. You lost your job.
Yes, based on the Obama Act, if you simply see the idea that those are coming down the road,
going
you should
through a divorce.
Things you see that see the path coming, that you're going to at a very short time have trouble making those mortgage payments. And of course, if you are currently delinquent in the mortgage payments, it's time to consider a short sale.
How about if the property is underwater?
That in itself isn't necessarily a reason for anyone to accept a short sale. There has to be a hardship associated with it.
So these big banks are going on a specific reason other than the value of your property has gone down. Because a lot of people panic. When their property goes down, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, they panic, they want to do something, take some action, do a short sale. You wouldn't recommend it in that case?
Well, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't, as a homeowner, empathize with the idea that that's a great reason that you probably want to get out of that house.
Right.
But you got to understand from a lender's perspective that it's not necessarily the reason they're going to allow it. They need to see an acceptable hardship, like a divorce, like unemployment, like reduced income, something that's causing you a real effect. You know, a scenario where you're not able to make those payments currently, or again, it's coming down the road and you're going to find yourself in that hardship. Savings have run out. Maybe what you're using to subsidize that payment with, you've had that hardship already, and you've been subsidizing it for a few months, but that savings account's getting ready to run dry. Don't wait till you're faced with a foreclosure to consider a short sale.
Be proactive again.
Be very proactive.
Why should a borrower, what are the benefits of a short sale? Why should a borrower not just let the home go into a foreclosure?
Well, without giving true legal advice to the idea of the difference between the two and what a foreclosure may, ultimately do to your credit record, a typical experience with foreclosure is that can stay on your record and kind of affect you for about 7 years, typically,
7 years
within the credit bureau. Whereas a short sale is going to be showed as a settled debt, and that typically is about 3 years turnaround time before you can actually apply for a new home loan. So it's a much less devastating impact on your credit report because it showed that you were being proactive. You were, not waiting for foreclosure to come at you. You stepped out and really tried to be proactive and do something to avoid that. And it really does make a difference to your credit report. Not to mention the cause and effect of the emotional and all that goes with a foreclosure. It's not pretty. You don't want to go through that if you don't have to.
Has it been your experience that a short sale is better for your credit report than a foreclosure?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I can't give you specific legal advice or credit advice. You want to consult your credit bureaus with specific reference to that. But it's been our experience that with a short sale, it's going to show a settled debt on your credit report. And that, even within the confines of looking at reapplying for a new home loan, is going to allow you to do that within 3 years' time. And obviously, once it's a settled debt, the account's closed. It's no longer drawing derogatory credit. And you avoid a foreclosure on your record, which can be devastating. A lot of lenders don't even want to lend to someone again once they've had a foreclosure because they see there that they've got a history of not paying their mortgage payment.
Right.
And the idea that sticks out there like a bankruptcy for 7 years in your credit report or longer, it certainly is a much more proactive approach.
So you mentioned settled debt. In the case of in a short sale, the credit score may actually go up?
It may actually go up right afterwards because, again, you've closed out that account. I wouldn't look for amazing rebounds, but in the idea that account has been closed and settled, it's no longer drawing derogatory credit to bring your score down.
At what point should someone who feels as though they can no longer continue with their payments, should they contact your office?
I'd say today, as soon as possible. There's a recent change in the law to the Mortgage Relief Act of 2007, which has changed the or made the potential income from a short sale, the deficiency judgment, as it were, potentially. It's not always classified as that when you get through a short sale, but it alleviates the tax implications on that for a primary residence, and it only extends through 2012, so time is of the essence.
So if they see something bad coming down the road, like you mentioned, divorce, unemployment, take the step now, at least investigate it. What do you got to lose, correct?
Absolutely, be proactive.
You mentioned deficiency judgment. What is that exactly?
A deficiency judgment arises from the amount not paid when a house is sold. Typically at a foreclosure auction, a house will maybe sell for $55,000, maybe $100,000 is owed to the lender.
Okay.
Well, that $45,000 difference that has not been collected and paid back to the lender is at that point can be construed or carried as a deficiency judgment.
Okay.
The lender can choose two things. They can either seek to file that judgment against you and come after you for that amount owed, or they can choose to write the amount off, and then in which case they need to file a report, typically a 1099-C, cancellation of debt, with the IRS.
Do you know how long they have to make that decision? Can they come after you immediately, or can they wait 4 or 5 years and then decide to come after you? Do you have any idea? Is that a legal answer?
I think we're not exactly sure. I know we see that some lenders now are selling that deficiency debt off to third-party collectors. So I do think that there are some that will chase that debt down in the future. Most of them are actually just deciding to write the debt off, which is what makes this Mortgage Relief Act of 2007 important, because that amount that you didn't pay the lender, that's been forgiven, as it were, is now considered by the IRS taxable.
Okay, I see. Now, when negotiating with a lender, why is it important to get a real estate agent involved rather than just the seller doing it themselves, the homeowner doing it themselves?
Well, the seller can do it themselves in all intents and purposes, but they're not going to be able to ultimately find the open market, get the best offer for the deal, for the house, and propose the best contract or deal for the lender. And so that open market ability to put it out there so everybody has an opportunity to see it, including other brokers, and really having an open market sale gets the best price for the house. Lenders are more likely to accept that offer because it's the best deal they're going to get. And again, why short sales are a lot better choice for the lenders than a foreclosure, because at a foreclosure you have a very limited audience that morning when it's on the courthouse steps being sold than you do over a few months period of time to get it sold via the open market, via the MRIS. And it's that scenario that offers a much better contract usually than they'll get in a very selective sale.
How do you feel about these advertisements we're getting deluged with, like, we buy homes, we buy homes, we buy? How do you feel about those? How are those used?
I'd say don't be suckered into those. Those are typically an investor looking to buy a home quite cheaply, and in some cases it works well for them, but it doesn't usually bode well for the consumer or the homeowner at all, in the idea that the person making that offer has really nothing to lose. They make that cheap offer. The lender may indeed take the offer, but then it increases obviously the potential for that deficiency judgment or that amount not to be paid back to the lender because they didn't go to the open market. They didn't get the best deal for the lender. And in which case, if it doesn't get accepted by the lender rejects that offer, then indeed they're going to find themselves typically in foreclosure because they've wasted a lot of their time they could have spent seeking a real legitimate offer on the property.
This question may be better for an accountant, but I will see how you field it. What are the tax implications of a seller utilizing a short sale?
Well, again, I can't give specific legal or accounting advice in the idea that I'm not a CPA, but I can again mention what's out there as common knowledge, which is the Mortgage Relief Act of 2007, and the idea that it does push off the tax consequences of that 1099-C, the cancellation of debt that they may receive from their lender through the end of 2012.
Okay. If an appraisal or home inspection notates that repairs need to be done to the property, is the seller ultimately responsible to make those repairs?
Not if they work with us, because we're always going to have our addendums to the contract showing as-is sale. We want to eliminate that problem up front because a lot of these properties do have those kinds of issues, and people are going to get a fair deal for them when they make those offers, but we don't want to have them held up with someone trying to figure out who's going to make those repairs when indeed the person's already in default usually or headed that way. We don't want to put a further burden on this file by allowing it to kind of go south because someone's waiting for someone to make a repair, and indeed the owners a lot of times have almost vacated the property, as it were.
How do you determine the sales price on a short sale that will be acceptable to the seller and the lender? How do you do that?
Well, unless the lender ultimately gives us an appraisal value, which they do in the FHA files, they determine up front what the listing price has to be, and it's got to be within a certain realm of that original appraisal value. We'll simply do a comparative market analysis to determine what current properties like that are selling for in the area and list it at that price. And then through a short period of time, we continue to bring down the price till we get an offer, because obviously the point of this is not when it's going to sell, it's that it has to sell. It's going to have to sell in a short order or it's going to end up in foreclosure. So we do seek to start at a fair price and